Welcome back. Today's episode is going to make some of you genuinely uncomfortable. And I say that not to be dramatic, but because I think discomfort is exactly the right response to what we're going to talk about. Because the data on retirement income in America is sobering in a way that most people are not prepared for. Here's the number I want you to hold in your mind as we go through this: $24,000. That is approximately what the average American retiree lives on per year from all sources combined. $24,000 per year. That breaks down to about $2,000 per month. And I want you to sit with that for a second before we go any further, because it has implications that ripple through almost every financial decision a working age person makes. Now, some of you are thinking, but surely people have other savings. Surely that's not the full picture. And you're right that there are layers to the story. Some retirees do significantly better than that median, but the majority don't. And understanding why the majority don't, what the actual income breakdown looks like, where the gaps are, and what the people who do retire comfortably do differently, that's the entire content of today's episode. Let's start with the full picture of the numbers. The Social Security Administration's annual statistical supplement reports that for Americans aged 65 and older, the median total income from all sources, including Social Security, pensions, employer-sponsored retirement plans, and personal savings and investments, is approximately $27,000 per year for an individual and around $51,000 for a married household. For the bottom half of retirees by income, Social Security alone accounts for more than 80% of total retirement income, meaning that for the majority of American retirees, their entire financial life in retirement is built on a government benefit program originally designed as a supplement, not a foundation. Chapter 1. Where retirement income actually comes from. The full breakdown. To understand the retirement income picture in America, you have to understand that most retirees draw from multiple sources simultaneously, or are supposed to. Financial planners have traditionally called this the three-legged stool of retirement: Social Security, pensions or employer-sponsored retirement plans, and personal savings and investments. The problem is that for most Americans, two of the three legs are either absent or dramatically shorter than they need to be. Let's go through each source and look at what the actual data shows. Social Security, the dominant leg. Social Security is far and away the largest single income source for American retirees. The average monthly Social Security retirement benefit paid to retired workers in 2024 is approximately $1,907 per month, roughly $22,900 per year. If you're among the roughly 40% of retirees who are married and receiving a spousal benefit as well, the combined household benefit rises, but the individual benefit remains modest. For context, the 2024 federal poverty level for a single individual is $15,060 per year. The average Social Security retirement benefit puts a single retiree at about 1.5 times the poverty line. That is not poverty, but it is a narrow margin above it, and it is the income many retirees are living on as their primary source. According to the Social Security Administration's 2023 Annual Statistical Supplement, approximately 26% of married elderly beneficiaries and 45% of unmarried elderly beneficiaries rely on Social Security for 90% or more of their total income. Across all elderly Americans, Social Security provides at least half of total income for roughly 50% of recipients. The program was never designed to be a primary retirement income vehicle. Its stated objective at inception was to supplement other sources of retirement savings. The reality it now serves, for most Americans, is almost entirely different from that design intent. The maximum possible Social Security benefit for someone who worked 35 years at high earnings and delayed claiming until age 70 was $4,873 per month in 2024. But this maximum applies to a tiny fraction of retirees. The realistic range for most people who work average wage jobs their entire careers and claim at full retirement age is $1,500 to $2,500 per month. Understanding where your personal benefit is likely to land, which you can check at any time through your Social Security account at ssa.gov, is one of the most important financial homework assignments any working adult should complete.
Pensions, the disappearing leg. Defined benefit pensions, the kind where your employer guarantees a fixed monthly payment in retirement based on your salary and years of service, were once a cornerstone of the American retirement system. In 1980, roughly 38% of private sector workers had a pension. Today, that number has collapsed to approximately 11%. The shift from defined benefit pensions to defined contribution plans, primarily 401ks, transferred the entire burden of retirement savings from employees to employees. And it happened during a period when financial literacy education was almost non-existent, automatic enrollment wasn't mandated, and most workers had little to no guidance on what to do with the new responsibility they'd been handed. The Bureau of Labor Statistics National Compensation Survey found that as of 2023, only 15% of all private sector workers and 27% of state and local government workers have access to a traditional defined benefit pension. This represents a seismic shift from the mid-20th century retirement system, when pensions were the dominant retirement vehicle. Research by economists Alicia Manel and colleagues at the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College has consistently found that the decline of pensions is one of the primary structural causes of the retirement savings crisis, because 401k plans require consistent individual action to produce meaningful results, and most people, left to their own devices, undersave dramatically. If you work in the private sector and don't have a pension, which describes the overwhelming majority of private sector workers today, this leg of the stool is simply missing from your retirement plan. Your 401k or IRA is doing the job that your grandparents' employer did automatically, and whether it does that job adequately depends entirely on decisions you make starting now. Personal savings and investment income, the wobbly leg. The third leg of the retirement stool, personal savings, retirement accounts, and investment income, is where the data is perhaps most alarming for working-age adults to absorb. Vanguard's How America Saves 2023 report, analyzing data from over 5 million retirement plan participants, found that the median 401k balance for all participants was just $35,286. Even among participants in their 60s, those closest to retirement, the median balance was $87,572. At a sustainable withdrawal rate of 4%, that $87,572 generates approximately $3,500 per year, less than $300 per month in supplemental retirement income. Combined with the average Social Security benefit, a typical 60-something with a median 401k balance is looking at total retirement income of roughly $25,000 to $26,000 per year. That number, $25,000 to $26,000, lines up almost exactly with the broader population statistics, which tells us that the majority of American retirees are living very close to or at the national average, which means they are living on an income that most working-age adults would consider inadequate for maintaining anything resembling their pre-retirement standard of living. The full picture of average retirement income sources looks roughly like this when you add everything together. Social Security provides the largest share at approximately $22,900 annually for the average recipient. Pensions, for the roughly quarter of retirees who have them, add a median of around $10,000 to $14,400 annually. Retirement account withdrawals, for those with meaningful savings, contribute another $5,000 to $15,000 depending on the balance. Investment income from taxable accounts, for those who have them, adds a smaller supplemental amount. And a significant share of retirees, particularly those in early retirement, continue to earn some income from part-time work.
Social Security, average, approximately $22,900 per year, primary source for about 90% of retirees. Pensions, where applicable, $10,000 to $14,400 per year. Only about 15% of private sector workers have these. Retirement account withdrawals, $5,000 to $15,000 per year, dependent on balance. Median balance is low. Investment income from taxable accounts, for those who have them, $2,000 to $5,000 per year, only for those with taxable savings. Part-time earnings varies widely. About 20% of retirees work part-time. When you add those up for a typical retiree without a pension and a median 401k balance, the combined total lands right around $25,000 to $28,000 per year. That is the financial reality most Americans are walking toward. Chapter 2. What $25,000 per year actually buys in retirement. The real cost of living. Let's get very concrete about what $25,000 per year, roughly $2,083 per month, actually means in practice for a retired American in 2026, because the abstract number doesn't tell the story as powerfully as the budget does. The average monthly expenses for a retired American household, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditure Survey, break down roughly as follows. Housing is the largest category at around $1,322 per month, covering rent or mortgage, utilities, maintenance, and insurance. Transportation comes next at approximately $567 per month. Healthcare is third, and this is where retirement planning gets truly sobering at around $500 to $700 per month, a figure that rises significantly with age. Food costs average around $430 per month for a retired household. That's already $2,819 to $3,019 just for these four basic categories. The gap, monthly basic expenses for a retired household average approximately $3,000 or more. The average Social Security benefit alone provides roughly $1,907 per month. That gap, over $1,000 per month, is what personal savings and investment income must fill. For the majority of Americans who reach retirement with minimal savings, this gap is either unfilled, leading to genuine financial strain, or closed by working in retirement out of necessity rather than choice. The healthcare cost reality deserves special attention because it is the single most underestimated expense in retirement planning. The popular assumption is that Medicare covers most healthcare costs in retirement. The reality is more complicated and significantly more expensive. Fidelity's annual retiree healthcare cost estimate projected that a 65-year-old couple retiring in 2024 would need approximately $330,000 in after-tax savings specifically to cover healthcare costs in retirement, including Medicare premiums, copays, deductibles, dental, vision, and hearing expenses not covered by standard Medicare. That's $330,000 in dedicated healthcare reserves, on top of all other retirement savings. For a single individual, the estimate is approximately $165,000. These figures assume average health. Those with chronic conditions face substantially higher projected costs. Most people simply have not saved $330,000 specifically for healthcare on top of their general retirement savings, which means healthcare spending becomes a major variable budget item that competes with everything else on a fixed income and often wins, forcing reductions in food, transportation, and social activity to cover medical costs. There's also the inflation factor that retirement budget analyses often underweight. While the overall inflation rate may average 2 to 3% annually over long periods, healthcare inflation has historically run at 5 to 7% per year, roughly double the general inflation rate. For a retiree with a fixed income, even modest general inflation erodes purchasing power meaningfully over a 20 to 30-year retirement. A $2,000 monthly income in 2026 has the purchasing power of roughly $1,480 in today's dollars by 2036 and about $1,095 by 2046 at a 3% annual inflation rate. The math of inflation on a fixed income over a 25-year retirement is quietly devastating for anyone unprepared for it. Research by the Employee Benefit Research Institute found that healthcare and long-term care expenses represent the two largest and most unpredictable cost categories in retirement and are the primary drivers of what the researchers termed retirement income shortfall, the gap between income and actual spending needs. The study found that households in the bottom half of retirement income distribution spend a disproportionate share of income on healthcare, leaving insufficient resources for housing, food, and other necessities. For the lowest income retirees, healthcare spending absorbs more than 20% of total retirement income.
Chapter 3. Who retires comfortably and what they did differently. Okay, I don't want this to be purely a catalog of problems without a clear picture of what the solution looks like. So let's talk about the Americans who do retire comfortably, the ones whose retirement income adequately covers their lifestyle and gives them financial dignity and flexibility in their final decades. Because they exist. Their numbers are growing, and their behaviors are well documented. The dividing line between comfortable and struggling in retirement is not primarily income level during the working years. Researchers consistently find that it is savings rate and savings behavior, the gap between income and spending, directed consistently toward long-term vehicles across the working years. High-income earners who spent everything they made are not better positioned than moderate income earners who saved 15% consistently. The behavior matters more than the paycheck. A comprehensive study by the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College, using the Health and Retirement Study longitudinal dataset, found that households maintaining savings rates above 15% of gross income throughout their working years were approximately 3.5 times more likely to achieve retirement income adequacy, defined as maintaining at least 70% of pre-retirement living standards, compared to households with savings rates below 5%. The savings rate differential was a stronger predictor of retirement adequacy than income level, education, or occupational category. The income adequacy standard, the 70 to 80% rule. A widely accepted benchmark in retirement planning research is the income replacement rate, the percentage of pre-retirement income that retirement income should replace to maintain a comparable standard of living. The commonly cited target is 70 to 80% of pre-retirement gross income. Why not 100%? Because several major expense categories typically decrease in retirement. Work-related costs like commuting, professional clothing, and lunches disappear. Mortgage payments may be eliminated if the home is paid off. Savings contributions themselves stop. You're drawing down rather than building up. And children are typically no longer financial dependents. These reductions genuinely mean that $1 in retirement can go further than $1 during peak earning years. The problem is that while 70 to 80% replacement sounds achievable, getting there requires specific, deliberate financial architecture, and most people haven't built it. The National Institute on Retirement Security found in their 2023 report that approximately 56% of working Americans are on track to replace less than 50% of their pre-retirement income, well below the 70 to 80% adequacy benchmark. Among lower income workers, only 28% are on track to meet the adequacy benchmark. Even among middle income workers, roughly half face projected retirement income shortfalls. The Institute characterized this as a retirement security crisis that cuts across income levels, though its severity is greatest for lower and middle income workers who lack access to pensions and have minimal savings. What the comfortable retirees do differently? The research on retirement income adequacy consistently identifies the same set of behaviors that distinguish comfortable retirees from struggling ones. These are not secrets. They are not complicated, but they require starting early and sustaining consistently, which is why so few people actually do all of them. They started saving early and used tax-advantaged accounts from the beginning of their careers. The
compounding mathematics favor people who invest in their 20s dramatically over those who start in their 40s. Even if the total lifetime contributions are similar, a dollar invested at 25 is worth roughly 4 to 5 times more at retirement than a dollar invested at 45, purely due to the additional compounding runway. They always captured the full employer 401k match. The employer match, typically 3 to 6% of salary, represents an immediate 50 to 100% return on matched contributions. Declining to capture it is one of the most financially costly decisions a working American can make, equivalent to leaving a portion of their salary on the table every year. They maintained savings rates above 15% of gross income, especially during their peak earning years. This typically required making intentional decisions about housing, transportation, and lifestyle that kept those expenses below what their income would allow them to spend. The gap between income and spending is the wealth-building engine. Comfortable retirees kept that gap open throughout their careers. They did not make early 401k withdrawals. The average American who has retired or changed jobs has accessed their 401k early at least once, typically during a financial emergency. Each early withdrawal incurs a 10% penalty, immediate income taxes, and, most costly, eliminates decades of compounding growth on the withdrawn amount. Protecting the retirement account from early access is a fundamental wealth preservation behavior. They planned for healthcare costs specifically. They used health savings accounts when eligible, understanding that HSA contributions provide a triple tax advantage: pre-tax contributions, tax-free growth, and tax-free withdrawals for medical expenses. They estimated their projected Medicare costs in advance and built reserve savings specifically to cover them. They did not assume Medicare would cover everything. They delayed Social Security claiming. For every year you delay claiming Social Security beyond your full retirement age, up to age 70, your benefit increases by 8%. That is a guaranteed, inflation-adjusted 8% annual return, which is extremely difficult to match in any other investment vehicle. Delaying from 66 to 70 increases the monthly benefit by approximately 32%. For someone in reasonable health expecting a normal lifespan, the lifetime benefit from delaying is often $50,000 to $100,000 or more in additional total income. Research by the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College found that most Americans claim Social Security at or before their full retirement age, and a significant plurality claim at the earliest eligible age of 62, permanently reducing their benefit by up to 30% compared to claiming at full retirement age. The researchers estimated that the median American leaves approximately $111,000 in lifetime Social Security benefits uncollected by claiming earlier than is financially optimal. For married couples, optimal claiming strategy can be worth $200,000 or more in combined lifetime benefits.
Chapter 4. The Retirement Income Gender Gap, a crisis within the crisis. There is a dimension of the retirement income picture that gets discussed far less than it deserves: the enormous gender gap in retirement income. Women in America retire with significantly less savings, lower Social Security benefits, and higher rates of poverty in old age than men. And the reasons for this are structural, documented, and important to understand regardless of your own gender, because they affect household planning decisions for couples and families. The National Women's Law Center reported that women age 65 and older have a poverty rate of 11.5% compared to 8.1% for men in the same age group. The median income for retired women is approximately $21,400 per year, compared to $36,100 for retired men, a gap of roughly 41%. This disparity is driven by multiple structural factors: the gender gap during working years, which reduces Social Security benefits since benefits are calculated on lifetime earnings, career interruptions for caregiving that disproportionately affect women, lower rates of access to employer-sponsored retirement plans in female-dominated industries, and longer life expectancies that require retirement savings to last more years. The longevity factor is particularly significant and often overlooked in retirement planning discussions. According to the Social Security Administration, a woman who reaches age 65 today can expect to live, on average, to age 87. A man who reaches 65 can expect to live to approximately 84. That 3-year difference may sound small, but it means women need retirement savings to last longer. 3 additional years of healthcare costs, housing, food, and all other expenses, while simultaneously accumulating less during their working years due to pay gaps and career interruptions. For couples planning retirement together, this has a very specific implication. The surviving spouse, who is statistically likely to be the woman, will face a significant income reduction when her partner dies, because one Social Security check will disappear and some pension or retirement account income may also cease. Planning for this survivorship cliff is a critical piece of retirement planning that many couples neglect entirely. The survivorship cliff. When a spouse dies in retirement, the surviving partner loses one Social Security benefit, typically keeping only the larger of the two. If the couple was living on $3,500 per month in combined benefits, the survivor may drop to $2,200 per month overnight, a 37% income reduction with little change in fixed costs like housing and utilities. Couples planning retirement must stress test their financial plan specifically against this single income scenario. Chapter 5. Why so many Americans are underprepared and the structural reasons behind it. At this point, you might be asking, how did we get here? The United States is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Retirement planning resources and tools have never been more accessible. Why are the majority of Americans looking at retirement incomes that, by any honest measure, are inadequate? The answer involves several structural forces that compound each other, and understanding them is important both for contextualizing your own situation and for making the decisions that separate your outcome from the average. The shift from defined benefit to defined contribution. We touched on this earlier, but it deserves deeper examination. The shift from employer-guaranteed pensions to employee-directed 401k plans, which accelerated through the 1980s and 1990s, was sold to workers as an improvement. Greater portability, potential for higher returns, more control of your own retirement destiny. For financially sophisticated workers who understood investing, made consistent contributions, and didn't access funds early, it was often a good deal. For everyone else, the majority of workers who were suddenly handed investment account responsibility with minimal education and no institutional guidance, it produced outcomes dramatically worse than the pensions they replaced. The 401k system works excellently as a wealth accumulation tool when used correctly, but using it correctly requires knowledge, discipline, and sustained behavior over decades, things that the system did almost nothing to systematically cultivate. Economist Teresa Ghilarducci, in research widely cited in retirement policy literature, estimated that the shift from defined benefit to defined contribution retirement plans has cost the median American household approximately $600,000 in retirement wealth compared to a comparable household with a traditional pension would have accumulated, controlling for income and career length. The gap is driven primarily by the behavioral factors that undermine defined contribution performance: early withdrawals, inconsistent contributions, poor investment choices, and high fees in plan menus. Financial literacy and the knowledge gap. There is a robust body of research documenting that Americans, as a whole, have low financial literacy, and that low financial literacy directly translates to worse retirement outcomes. Anna Maria Lusardi and Olivia Mitchell, in foundational research published in the American Economic Review, found that only 32% of Americans could correctly answer three basic financial literacy questions covering interest compounding, inflation effects, and investment diversification. Their follow-up research found that individuals with higher financial literacy accumulated significantly more wealth by retirement, not because they earned more, but because they made better savings, investment, and withdrawal decisions throughout their working years. The researchers estimated that differences in financial literacy accounted for approximately 30 to 40% of the wealth gap between high and low wealth households. This is both sobering and empowering. Sobering because it confirms that most Americans are navigating one of the most consequential financial systems of their lives, the retirement savings system, with insufficient knowledge to use it optimally. Empowering because financial literacy is learnable. The research shows it can be acquired at any age and that its benefits compound over the remaining working and saving years. Every episode of this series is, in a sense, building the financial literacy that the research says directly translates into better retirement outcomes. The behavioral leakage problem. Even workers who participate in a 401k consistently face a devastating behavioral risk that the retirement savings industry calls leakage, the early withdrawal of retirement funds before retirement for non-retirement purposes. Research by the Employee Benefit Research Institute found that approximately 40% of workers who change jobs cash out their 401k rather than rolling it over to a new account or IRA. The 10% early withdrawal penalty plus immediate income taxes typically consume 30 to 40% of the withdrawn amount. But the greater long-run cost is the eliminated compounding. A $25,000 early withdrawal at age 35 eliminates approximately $185,000 in future portfolio value at age 65. The compound growth that $25,000 would have generated over 30 years at 8% annual returns. Leakage compounds the structural problems of the retirement system. Workers who change jobs frequently, which describes a large and growing share of the American workforce, are particularly vulnerable because each job change creates a moment of decision about what to do with the accumulated retirement balance. And the path of least resistance is often the cash out rather than the rollover. Chapter 6. What this means for you. The action plan. We've spent a lot of this episode looking at difficult data. Now I want to close with what all of it means in practical terms, what the research says you should actually do, regardless of where you are in your career, to ensure your retirement income is not a statistic in the next version of the numbers we just covered. If you're in your 20s or 30s, you have the most powerful tool available: time. The research is unambiguous. Starting retirement savings in your 20s, even at a modest rate, produces retirement outcomes that are dramatically better than starting in your 40s at a higher rate. The compounding mathematics are simply that decisive. The single most impactful retirement decision you can make right now is to open a Roth IRA if you haven't already, contribute enough to your 401k to capture the full employer match, and automate both contributions so they happen before you see the money. Action for 20s to 30s. Open a Roth IRA this week. Set your 401k contribution to at least capture the full employer match. Increase your total savings rate to 15% of gross income as soon as possible, even if you start at 6% and increase by 1% annually. Every year you start earlier is worth more than any investment decision you will ever make. If you're in your 40s, the stakes are getting real, but time is still working for you. Your 40s are the highest impact decade for retirement savings for most people. Income is typically near or approaching its peak. Children may still be expensive, but the end of that expense horizon is in sight. The compounding clock is still running meaningfully. Money saved at 45 has 20 years to grow before a typical retirement age of 65. Maximum 401k contribution limits of $23,000 per year in 2024 should be a target, not an aspiration. If you have a spouse who has been out of the workforce, consider their Social Security claiming strategy and whether spousal or survivor benefits apply to your household plan.
Action for 40s. Project your Social Security benefit at ssa.gov. This takes 10 minutes and is one of the most valuable pieces of financial information you can have. Calculate your retirement income gap. What will your projected Social Security plus current savings generate annually, and what does that leave unfilled? That gap is what you are building against, and knowing it makes every savings decision concrete rather than abstract. If you're in your 50s, urgency is the right response, not panic. Your 50s are the final major accumulation decade before retirement becomes near term. The IRS allows catch-up contributions starting at age 50, an additional $7,500 per year to your 401k beyond the standard limit for a total of $30,500 in 2024, and an additional $1,000 per year to your IRA for a total of $8,000. These catch-up provisions are meaningful. Someone who maximizes them from age 50 to 65 contributes an additional $127,500 over that period, which compounds to a significantly larger balance. Social Security claiming strategy becomes critically important at this stage. The research is consistent. For those in reasonably good health, delaying claiming to 70 is almost always the highest net present value decision, especially for the higher earning spouse in a married household, whose benefit will determine the survivor benefit for the remaining spouse. Run the numbers specifically for your situation. There are excellent free calculators from the Social Security Administration and from academic research institutions.
Action for 50s. Maximize catch-up contributions immediately. Get a detailed Social Security claiming strategy analysis. Not a guess, an analysis. Fidelity, Vanguard, and several academic resources offer free or low-cost tools.
If healthcare costs in retirement haven't been specifically planned for, open or maximize an HSA right now. It is the most tax-efficient vehicle available for retirement healthcare savings for everyone. The three numbers every adult should know about their own retirement situation, and most people know none of them. Your projected Social Security benefit at various claiming ages, available at ssa.gov for free in about 10 minutes. This is the foundation of your retirement income, and every year of delay between 62 and 70 increases it meaningfully. Your current retirement savings balance and the annual withdrawal that balance would support using the 4% rule, your balance times 0.04 gives you the sustainable annual income your savings can generate currently. Your retirement income gap, the difference between what you'll need annually in retirement, typically 70 to 80% of current gross income, and what your projected Social Security plus 4% of current savings will produce. That gap is what you are building against, and knowing it makes every savings decision concrete rather than abstract. Research by Anna Maria Lusardi and colleagues found that Americans who had formally calculated their retirement savings needs, who knew their own retirement numbers, were significantly more likely to have adequate savings than those who had not done the calculation, even when controlling for income and education level. The act of calculating the specific number appears to create a psychological commitment and behavioral motivation that vague intentions to save more do not. Knowing your retirement gap is one of the most motivating financial actions available to you. I want to close with a simple image. There are essentially two retirements in America. One is a retirement built on intentionality, on a working life of consistent saving, smart tax management, disciplined behavior through market cycles, and deliberate planning. This retirement, even on a modest income, can be a period of real financial comfort, flexibility, and dignity. It doesn't require exceptional luck or extraordinary income. It requires sustained decisions made over decades. The other retirement is built by default, on the assumption that things will work out, that Social Security will be enough, that there will always be time to save more later. This retirement, which the data we've covered today describes for the majority of Americans, is a period of financial constraint, difficult trade-offs, and outcomes that most people, if they'd seen them coming clearly at 35 or 45, would have done everything in their power to prevent. The difference between those two retirements is not fate. It is not primarily luck. It is decisions, financial decisions, made repeatedly over years that compound in one direction or the other. You are making those decisions right now, even if it doesn't feel like it. Every year you delay maximizing your retirement contributions is a compounding decision that shapes which retirement you will live. Every year you stay the course is a compounding decision in the other direction. The average retirement income in America is lower than you expected. Now you know why, and you know what separates the average from something better. The decisions are yours. Thanks for watching. If this gave you clarity or motivation, share it with someone who needs the wake-up call. Drop in the comments, are you on track for the retirement you want, or did this video change how you're thinking about your plan? Like and subscribe. See you in the next one.